Evelyn Carter had just returned from her art studio when the knock came. The evening rain had begun to fall softly, drumming on the roof in a rhythm that made her small house feel even quieter. She was tired, her hands stained with paint, her mind still full of unfinished colors and sketches. When she opened the door, she froze. Standing there were two people she hadn't seen in years, Daniel and Mia Lawson. For a second, the world felt like it had stopped moving. Daniel had been her closest friend in college, the one person who had known her better than anyone. He was the dreamer who played the guitar on old rooftops, the one who made her laugh when life got too heavy. And though Evelyn had never said it aloud, he was also the man she had once quietly loved. But life had taken them in different directions, and Daniel had married Mia, a woman Evelyn always admired for her warmth and quiet confidence. Seeing them together again felt strange, like opening a book she had closed long ago but never forgotten. She forced a smile. "Daniel? Mia? I can't believe it's you. Come in, please." They stepped inside, bringing with them the smell of rain and nostalgia. The living room looked cozy, full of the soft glow of evening lamps and scattered canvases leaning against the walls. Evelyn poured them tea, trying to fill the silence with simple words. "So, how have you been? It's been... what? 8 years?" Daniel gave a small laugh, though it didn't reach his eyes. "Almost 9. Mia nodded politely, smiling in a way that looked practiced, gentle but tired. They talked about familiar things at first. Work, cities they'd lived in, people they still kept in touch with. Daniel now worked as an architect. Mia was a therapist. They spoke kindly, but underneath their words, Evelyn felt something heavy, something that didn't belong to small talk. Daniel's eyes kept drifting toward the window, and Mia's fingers nervously traced the rim of her teacup. After a few minutes, the conversation faded into silence. The rain outside grew louder, the sound wrapping around the room like a curtain. Evelyn set down her cup and looked at them carefully. "You didn't drive 3 hours to talk about old college memories," she said softly. "What's really going on?" Daniel hesitated, his jaw tightening slightly. "You're right," he said finally. "We came here because we need your help." The way he said it made Evelyn's stomach tighten. "Help? What kind of help?" Mia looked at Daniel and then back at Evelyn. Her voice trembled as she spoke. "It's something very personal, Evelyn, and we know it's a lot to ask. But you've always been someone we trust. You've always had a good heart." Daniel's expression softened, but his eyes looked almost sad. "We've tried to figure this out ourselves, but we can't. You were the first person we both thought of." Evelyn's heartbeat quickened. She couldn't imagine what kind of request could bring the two of them all the way here, years after their friendship had faded into memory. There was an ache forming in her chest, a feeling of old emotions being pulled back to life. "Daniel," she said quietly, "you're starting to scare me. Just tell me what this is about." He nodded slowly. "It's not bad. It's just something I never thought I'd have to ask you." He looked down at his hands, then back up. "But I'll explain everything if you promise to listen with an open heart." Evelyn blinked, her throat dry. She nodded without speaking. He took a deep breath, but before he could continue, Mia gently placed her hand on his arm. "Maybe we should come back tomorrow," she whispered. "It's late, and this isn't an easy conversation." Evelyn shook her head. "No, please. Whatever it is, just tell me now." The clock ticked quietly in the background. The rain outside turned into a steady pour. The air between them felt fragile, like one wrong word could break it. Daniel exchanged a glance with Mia, then stood up slowly. "All right," he said softly. "We'll tell you, but just know this comes from a place of trust." Evelyn nodded again, though she could barely breathe. There was something about his tone that made her chest tighten, something that made her realize that whatever he was about to say would change things forever. Daniel's eyes softened as he looked at her. For a moment, the years between them disappeared. She could still see the young man she once knew, the one who had made her believe in kindness and laughter. But this time, there was something else in his eyes, something that looked a lot like regret. He opened his mouth to speak, but before he could, lightning flashed through the window, and the power flickered. The room dimmed, lit only by the faint orange glow of a candle on the table. Daniel sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Maybe this is a sign," he said quietly. "Maybe we should come back tomorrow." Evelyn stood, her voice steady but gentle. "No, you came all this way. You're not leaving until I know what this is about." Mia nodded, wiping at her eyes. "Okay, then we'll tell you everything." The rain roared louder, and Evelyn felt a strange mix of fear and curiosity swirling inside her. She didn't know why her hands were trembling, or why Daniel's presence still had the power to unsteady her heart. But deep down, she knew whatever he was about to say wasn't something ordinary. Something was about to change her life in a way she never expected. And as the rain whispered against the glass, Evelyn realized that this visit, this unexpected knock on her door, was only the beginning. The rain still fell when Daniel and Mia returned the next evening. Evelyn had barely slept the night before, replaying their words again and again. The way Daniel's eyes had looked at her, the weight in his voice, it all stirred something she hadn't felt in years. She brewed coffee and waited, her hands trembling slightly as she arranged the cups on the table. When they arrived, she could see it written all over their faces. Nervousness, exhaustion, and something deeper, like a quiet sadness they carried between them. Daniel spoke first, his voice low. "Evelyn, thank you for seeing us again. I know this is strange, and I don't want you to feel pressured, but we wanted to explain what we couldn't say last night." Evelyn nodded, her heart pounding. "Just tell me. I can handle it." He exchanged a look with Mia, who reached for his hand. Then, with a deep breath, Daniel said it. "Mia and I have been trying to have a baby for years, but nothing has worked. We've seen doctors, tried treatments, everything. It's been a long, painful journey." Evelyn's eyes softened. "I'm so sorry, Daniel. I didn't know." Mia gave a small, broken smile. "It's been hard. We've thought about adoption, but it's complicated for us right now." Then our doctor mentioned another option, surrogacy. She paused, her voice trembling. "And we both thought of you." Evelyn blinked, unsure if she had heard correctly. "Me?" Daniel nodded. "We know it's a huge thing to ask, but you've always been someone we trust completely. You're strong, kind, and you've always had this calm way of making things right." Evelyn felt her stomach twist. She didn't know what to say. Of all the things she imagined they might ask, this had never crossed her mind. She looked down at her coffee, then back up at them. "You want me to carry your baby?" Mia's eyes filled with tears. "Only if you feel comfortable. We would never want to hurt you or make things awkward. We just wanted to ask before we went to someone we didn't know. You're family to us." The room went silent except for the sound of rain hitting the window. Evelyn's thoughts spun out of control. She could hear her heartbeat in her ears. It was overwhelming, not because of fear, but because of what it meant. Carrying a child for Daniel, the man she had once loved quietly, felt like opening an old wound and filling it with something pure and painful all at once. She tried to steady her voice. "I don't know, Daniel. This is a lot. I never imagined you'd come to me with something like this." "I understand," Daniel said quickly. "You don't have to answer now. Take your time." We just wanted to be honest. We trust you with something this personal because of who you are. Mia nodded, her voice soft. It's not just about having a baby. It's about knowing that the person helping us understands love, kindness, and hope. You've always been that person. Evelyn's throat tightened. She wanted to speak, but the words caught somewhere between her heart and her lips. She could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on her. She stood and walked toward the window, staring out at the dark streets. The reflections of city lights blurred through the rain, and for a moment, she saw her younger self. The girl who had loved Daniel from a distance, too afraid to ever say it aloud. She turned back toward them. This isn't an easy decision for me. You both know what we shared back then. And even though it's in the past, this brings back memories I thought I'd buried. Daniel lowered his gaze. I know, and I'm sorry. I never wanted to hurt you, Evelyn. I just didn't know where else to turn. You were always someone who made things possible when they felt impossible. Evelyn's eyes softened. That's kind of you to say. But this isn't something small, Daniel. This would change everything for all of us. Mia reached out, her voice trembling. Please don't feel pressured. We'll understand if you say no. We just had to ask you first. You mean that much to us. Evelyn took a deep breath, trying to calm the storm inside her. I appreciate your honesty. I need time to think. I want to do what's right, not what feels emotional. Daniel nodded slowly. Of course. Take all the time you need. They stood to leave, and Evelyn walked them to the door. As Daniel stepped out, he paused and looked at her one last time. Evelyn, he said softly, whatever you decide, thank you for even listening. That means more than you know. She gave a faint smile, though her heart ached. Good night, Daniel. Good night, Mia. When they left, Evelyn stood by the window, watching the rain pour down. The streetlights glowed softly through the mist, and she pressed her hand against the cold glass. She couldn't stop thinking about Daniel, his voice, his eyes, the way he had looked at her when he asked for help. It wasn't the same as before, but there was still something in him that pulled at her heart. Her mind was full of questions. Could she really do this? Could she carry their child, knowing what Daniel once meant to her? What he still might mean, somewhere deep down? She sank into the couch, tears stinging her eyes. Not from sadness, but from the weight of what she was being asked to do. It wasn't just a request. It was a test of her heart, her strength, and her ability to let go of the past once more. Outside, the rain kept falling, steady and unending, as if the sky itself was whispering that love sometimes returns not as romance, but as a chance to do something selfless and pure. And as Evelyn sat there, lost in thought, she realized that her answer, whatever it would be, would not just change Daniel and Mia's lives. It would change her own forever. The morning air was cold when Evelyn called Daniel. She had spent nights awake, thinking about his request. Every time she tried to reason with herself, her heart got in the way. She thought about Daniel's voice, Mia's trembling smile, and the hope in their eyes. Finally, she realized that love sometimes isn't about holding on. It's about helping someone find their happiness. So she called and said the words that would change everything. I'll do it. There was silence on the other end. Then Daniel's voice, thick with emotion. Evelyn, are you sure? I am, she said softly. If this is what you truly need, then yes. Mia's voice came next, warm and grateful. You don't know what this means to us. Thank you, Evelyn. Truly. From that moment, their lives became connected again, more closely than any of them expected. The weeks that followed were filled with doctor visits, medical forms, and quiet conversations. Evelyn's life shifted from painting and solitude to a new routine, one that involved Daniel and Mia almost every day. They went to appointments together, shared dinners afterward, and talked about names, nurseries, and future dreams. At first, Evelyn kept her emotions tightly guarded. She told herself this was just an act of kindness, a gift for two people who had struggled for years. But every time Daniel smiled at her, with that same warmth she remembered from college, she felt her heart stir. She tried to push the feeling away, but it kept returning, quiet and constant, like the echo of an old song she could never forget. Mia, on the other hand, grew closer to Evelyn with every passing week. She often brought her flowers, cooked for her, and sent messages checking on her health. Her kindness was genuine, and Evelyn admired her strength. Yet, there were moments, small fleeting moments, when Evelyn saw the way Mia looked at Daniel. It was a look filled with love but also fear, as if she sensed something unspoken between him and Evelyn. One evening, after a long appointment, Daniel offered to drive Evelyn home. The car was quiet, filled only with the sound of rain tapping on the windshield. Evelyn watched the city lights blur through the window. "You and Mia are good together," she said finally, her voice steady but distant. Daniel glanced at her. "We've been through a lot. Sometimes love isn't easy. But we try." She nodded. "That's what matters." He hesitated before speaking again. "Evelyn, do you ever think about the past? About how things could have been?" Her heart skipped. "Sometimes. But life doesn't wait for what-ifs. It moves forward." Daniel gave a faint smile, but there was sadness in his eyes. "You were always better at moving forward than I was." Evelyn looked away, afraid of what might show on her face. That night, when she went to bed, she couldn't sleep. His words echoed in her mind, stirring old emotions she thought she had buried years ago. As months passed, her belly began to grow, and so did her bond with the child she carried. She often placed her hand over her stomach and whispered softly, feeling the gentle heartbeat beneath her palm. She knew it wasn't her baby, but it still felt like a part of her soul. Daniel and Mia visited often. They brought gifts, painted the nursery, and laughed with her over small things. Yet, the closer the delivery date came, the heavier Evelyn's heart grew. She could feel the distance between her and Daniel, an invisible wall built from everything they couldn't say. Sometimes she caught him watching her, his expression full of gratitude and something else, something fragile and unspoken. One afternoon, Mia invited Evelyn over to see the finished nursery. The room was beautiful, soft yellow walls, tiny stars on the ceiling, and a rocking chair by the window. Evelyn smiled, running her fingers along the crib. "It's perfect," she whispered. Mia smiled back, but her voice was shaky. "Evelyn, can I tell you something?" "Of course." Mia's eyes filled with tears. "I know what you once felt for Daniel. He told me about it long ago, before we got married." "I've always known." Evelyn froze, her breath catching. Mia shook her head. "No, please don't apologize. I don't blame you. I just want to thank you. Because even after everything, you still chose to help us. That means more to me than words can say." Evelyn felt tears sting her eyes. "Mia, I never meant to make things complicated." "I know," Mia said softly. "And that's why I trust you. Because your heart has always been pure." Evelyn couldn't speak. She hugged Mia, feeling the sincerity in her words. In that moment, she realized that this wasn't just about love. It was about grace, forgiveness, and letting go of old emotions with dignity. Weeks later, during one of the final checkups, the doctor smiled and said everything was perfect. Evelyn's eyes met Daniel's, and for the first time, she didn't feel the ache of lost love. She just felt peace. That night, Daniel walked her to her car. The street was quiet, the air crisp. He looked at her, his voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know how to thank you for what you've done." Evelyn smiled gently. "You don't have to. Just promise me you'll love that baby with everything you have." "I will," he said, his voice breaking slightly. She nodded, turning toward her car. "Then that's enough." As she drove home, she realized something beautiful. She had loved Daniel once, but now her love had changed. It wasn't romantic anymore. It was pure, selfless, and full of peace. She wasn't losing anything. She was giving something extraordinary, a new beginning, not just for Daniel and Mia, but for herself too. And in that quiet night, as the moon shone softly through the clouds, Evelyn finally understood that some love stories don't end with a kiss. They end with courage, compassion, and the strength to let go. The morning light filtered softly through the hospital window as Evelyn lay in bed, exhausted but peaceful. After hours of labor, the baby had arrived, a tiny, perfect girl with Daniel's brown eyes and Mia's soft features. The room smelled faintly of flowers and rain, the same scent that had followed Evelyn's journey from the beginning. The nurse placed the baby gently into her arms, and for a moment, the world went still. Evelyn looked down at the small face resting against her chest, and tears quietly filled her eyes. She had carried this child for 9 months, felt her kicks, whispered to her late at night, protected her with every heartbeat. Now she was here, real and breathing. And though the baby wasn't hers to keep, the love she felt in that moment was deeper than anything she had ever known. Daniel and Mia stood near the bed, both speechless. Mia's hands covered her mouth as she began to cry softly. Daniel looked like he was trying to hold himself together, but his eyes betrayed him. When Evelyn looked up, their gazes met, a silent exchange of gratitude, love, and farewell. "She's beautiful," Evelyn whispered, her voice barely audible. Mia nodded through tears. "You made this possible, Evelyn. You gave us everything we ever dreamed of." Evelyn smiled weakly. "No, Mia. You both gave me something too, a purpose I didn't know I was missing." The nurse took the baby for a moment, wrapping her in a pink blanket before handing her to Mia. Watching Mia cradle the baby made Evelyn's heart ache and heal all at once. It was a bittersweet beauty, the kind that comes only from love that asks for nothing in return. Daniel stepped closer to Evelyn's bed. "I don't even know how to begin to thank you," he said quietly. His voice shook as he continued. "What you've done. There are no words big enough for it." Evelyn smiled gently. "You don't owe me anything, Daniel. Just promise me she'll grow up surrounded by love. That's all I want." Mia nodded quickly, tears still streaming down her face. "We promise. She'll know how she came into this world, with kindness, faith, and the help of someone extraordinary." For a while, none of them spoke. The baby made a small sound, a soft, contented sigh, and all three turned toward her. That sound, tiny yet full of life, felt like a blessing in itself. A few hours later, when Mia and Daniel left the room to sign some documents, Evelyn sat alone by the window. The sun had risen higher now, washing the city in gold. She watched people walking below, living ordinary lives, unaware of the quiet miracle that had just unfolded here. She placed a hand on her stomach, flat again now, empty, and felt a wave of emotion rush through her. It wasn't sadness exactly, but something deeper, a mix of love, release, and a strange sense of peace. She whispered softly to herself, "Goodbye, little one. Be happy, always." The door opened and Daniel stepped back in. He looked hesitant, as if unsure whether to speak. "Mia's with the baby," he said quietly. "She wanted me to tell you we'll name her Grace." Evelyn's lips curved into a soft smile. "Grace," she repeated. "That's perfect." He nodded. taking a slow breath. Evelyn, before we leave, I need to say this. You've been more than a friend. You've shown me what real love looks like. Not the kind that asks or expects, but the kind that gives. She looked at him with tears in her eyes but kept her voice steady. Maybe that's what love was always meant to be. Something that makes someone else's life brighter, even if it means you stand in the shadows. Daniel's voice broke slightly. You'll never be in the shadows for us. She smiled. Maybe not for you. But it's time for me to let go, Daniel. You have your family now. That's how it's supposed to be. He nodded slowly, unable to speak. He took her hand gently, holding it for a long moment. No more words were needed. Everything that once remained unspoken between them, the past, the affection, the loss, all of it found its quiet ending there. When he finally left the room, Evelyn closed her eyes and breathed deeply. The pain in her heart didn't feel like heartbreak anymore. It felt like peace, like a door closing softly after a long, beautiful chapter. A few weeks later, Evelyn visited them once more. Mia greeted her with open arms, and baby Grace slept peacefully in her crib, wrapped in a soft blanket. Evelyn touched her tiny hand, smiling when the baby's fingers curled around hers. She's perfect, Evelyn whispered. Mia smiled warmly. You'll always be part of her story, you know. Evelyn shook her head gently. No, she's yours now. That's how it should be. I just wanted to see her once more. Daniel came into the room then, carrying coffee for everyone. When he saw Evelyn holding the baby, he stopped for a moment, taking in the sight, the woman who had changed everything for them. He smiled softly. You'll always have a place in our lives, Evelyn. Always. Evelyn nodded, feeling tears rise again, but this time they were peaceful ones. Take care of each other, she said, placing the baby gently back into Mia's arms. As she walked out into the afternoon light, the world felt both heavy and light at once. The air was cool, the sky a calm blue. She paused for a moment, looking up, letting the breeze brush against her face. She thought of Grace, of Daniel and Mia, and of the strange, beautiful way life sometimes brings people together to teach them what love truly means. Love, she realized, wasn't about possession or romance. It was about giving, about choosing kindness even when it hurts, about creating happiness, even if it's not your own. As she walked away from the hospital, the world seemed brighter, calmer. She knew her heart had been changed forever, not because she had loved and lost, but because she had loved and given. And in that moment, Evelyn Carter finally understood the truth she had been searching for all her life. Real love doesn't end. It transforms, it heals, and it lives on, quietly, beautifully, in the lives it touches.